Israel under fire, a multi-front assault on. June 20th, 2025 at 10:14 p.m. local time, the skies over central Israel erupted. More than 150 targets, missiles, drones, and decoys simultaneously flooded the country's airspace. Explosions rocked Petah Tikva. An oil terminal at Ben Gurion Airport caught fire, and in Tel Aviv, flames reached areas adjacent to the stock exchange building. The stock exchange immediately halted trading. This wasn't just an economic blow, it was a strike at the nation's nervous system. Local journalists broadcast live from under missile attack. A Channel 13 reporter from a shelter whispered on air, "This isn't just shelling, this is a new chapter." He was right. Within minutes, the Iron Dome air defense system began to falter. Overload warnings flashed, and priority targets had to be intercepted manually. Some missiles breached the defenses. One of the most devastating hits struck the port of Haifa. A fire at the oil depot soared hundreds of feet high, making the threat of an ecological disaster a looming reality. Meanwhile, drones launched from Yemen attacked Ramon Airport. The Houthis declared, "This is just the beginning. Southern Israel is now part of our military map." In Gaza, a different scene unfolded. Not missiles, but infantry. Al-Qassam brigades breached several border sections near Kisufim. Videos released by Hamas showed the moment of the breakthrough, using tunnels and mobile surveillance drones. Israeli forces returned fire, with casualties on both sides, militants and IDF soldiers. But the greatest fear came from the north. At 3:47 a.m., Al Jazeera aired an urgent report. Hezbollah declared that any further attack on Iran would turn all of northern Israel into an arc of fire. By morning, intelligence confirmed the movement of artillery and missile launchers in southern Lebanon. Simultaneously, the Pentagon raised the alert level in Iraq, Qatar, and Bahrain, with American bases beginning to evacuate non-essential personnel. In the streets of Israel, panic reigned. Sirens wailed, evacuations were underway, and blood stained the asphalt. But there was also anger. The opposition accused the government of an intelligence failure. Experts demanded immediate explanations. Why did the entire air defense system not work? Where were the allies? And why was Israel strategically isolated? There were no answers, only sirens and news headlines. A new era of war had begun. Tel Aviv Stock Exchange collapses, a symbolic blow. At 8:12 a.m., the Tel Aviv Stock Exchange, TASE, officially halted all operations. Over the past 12 hours, the TA-125 index had plummeted by over 17%, its largest drop since 2008. The cause was not economic panic, but physical damage to infrastructure. A missile launched from Iranian territory didn't directly hit the exchange building but struck an administrative center 120 meters away. The blast wave shattered glass facades, damaged the server hub, and compromised the security system. This was a shock not to schedules, but to consciousness itself. According to Bloomberg and Reuters, several major companies, including Bank Leumi, Elbit Systems, and Delek Group, were forced to freeze trading sessions and transfer assets abroad. The financial sector teetered on the brink of a chain reaction. Israel's finance minister urgently appealed to the governor of the Bank of Israel to temporarily implement currency controls and suspend operations with external funds. This marks the first time such measures have been taken in 35 years. Meanwhile, surveillance videos circulated across the country, showing the blast wave, the shock wave, and the screams of employees evacuating the building via emergency staircases. One employee, a man in his 50s with blood and cuts on his face, spoke to the camera. "I thought we were safe here. We work with numbers." It turned out numbers could die too. Against this backdrop, internal tensions escalated. The National Insurance Institute estimated damages in billions of shekels. Government bonds depreciated, and the shekel's exchange rate plummeted to 4.5 to the dollar. Protests erupted in central Tel Aviv. People demanded enhanced air defense, the creation of alternative financial hubs, and an immediate policy review regarding Iran. But the issue runs deeper. This was not just a strike on a building, it was a blow to a symbol of stability. The Tel Aviv Stock Exchange was considered a safe haven, even during the Intifada and Gaza operations. Not anymore. If missiles can reach here, there are no longer safe spots. International partners were in a panic. The European Central Bank held an emergency meeting. China halted the conversion of Israeli-linked bonds. The U.S. implemented a protocol to protect funds invested in the Israeli economy. The world understood. This was more than a regional conflict. It was a financial vortex that could engulf entire sectors. As technical crews cleared debris and restarted systems, a black flag hung from a shattered window, placed by an employee as a sign of mourning for economic independence. The image spread across global agencies because the fall of a stock exchange isn't just numbers, it's a moment when a nation feels hit in its heart. New generation Iranian missiles air defense failure. Overnight, from June 20th to 21, Iran launched over 170 missiles toward Israel. Among them, hypersonic warheads were detected for the first time. These weren't just projectiles, they were a defiant challenge to Israel's air defense system, the long-standing symbol of invincibility known as the Iron Dome. And this time, the dome cracked. At 2:13 a.m., radars in the Rishon LeZion area recorded trajectories that didn't match typical ballistic parameters. The objects flew at 6 times the speed of sound and changed course in flight. Air defense couldn't track them. As a result, 3 missiles struck the industrial zone of Houthis Hamas, causing an explosion that shook even the walls of IDF Central Command in Tel Aviv. Immediately after, information came in about the complete shutdown of the southern air defense line in Ashkelon. A missile hit an underground water reservoir in Sderot. In Beersheba, the air defense system didn't react at all. Its calculations were overwhelmed by false targets. The secret lay in Iran's tactics. The first wave consisted of cheap kamikaze drones, launched simultaneously from Yemen and Iraq's Wasit province. They created noise, overloading tracking channels. Then came high-trajectory ballistic missiles. Only after that, the hypersonic missiles, those that are impossible to dodge. The IDF admitted that the Iron Dome was unprepared for hypersonic threats. Defense Minister Yoav Gallant held an emergency meeting. The U.S. promised accelerated delivery of elements for the Iron Beam system, a laser equivalent capable of intercepting targets at speeds above Mach 5. But even in the best-case scenario, this system won't be ready until autumn. Israeli analysts openly stated, "We are dealing with a weapon for which there is no defense for the first time." Hypersonic missiles represent a new escalation in the arms race, one where Israel currently lags. Iran, it appears, received technical assistance from either China or North Korea. NATO intelligence reports confirm this, noting the suspicious similarity of the missile body geometry to China's DF-17. Meanwhile, a sense of vulnerability grew within Israeli society. Videos of Iron Dome failures circulated on social media. One popular clip showed an air defense missile launching, turning around, and falling into an open field. Comments under the video were unanimous. "We pay taxes for this." Amid these events, the Army implemented a restrained response mode, meaning only critically dangerous targets would be intercepted. But how does one determine which of 200 incoming warheads will be critical? This became the most difficult question. The numbers speak louder than missiles. In the last 48 hours alone, over 600 targets. Interception effectiveness, less than 30%. This is a disaster, and not just militarily. It's an informational and moral defeat. Israel is urgently deploying additional Patriot batteries and purchasing missiles from the U.S. But even here, it's not simple. American stockpiles in Europe were depleted after Ukraine. Redeployment takes time, and time is the main resource currently lacking. If Iran launches another wave of hypersonic strikes tomorrow, Israel will have nothing to respond with. This is no longer a tactical conflict. It's a strategic chess game where one player has learned to think 3 moves ahead, and the other continues to hope the old scenario will still work. Houthis enter the fray. Strike on Ramon Airport. Just when it seemed the fronts in the north and center of the country were overwhelmed, a new strike came from the south. At 4:08 a.m., Israeli military radars detected missile launches from Yemen. Almost simultaneously, dozens of drones appeared in the sky over Eilat, some of which penetrated airspace and were only detected seconds before impact. The primary target was Israel's southern air hub, Ramon Airport. This location had long been considered relatively safe, situated in a desert area and serving tourist and reserve flights. That's why the attack came as a complete surprise. The first missile struck a fuel depot, and the explosion caused a chain reaction, with fire spreading to hangars and partially destroying one of the control towers. The second hit the runway, leaving a crater several meters deep. Air traffic to the south of the country was completely halted. According to the Times of Israel, the Iranian-backed Houthis claimed responsibility for the attack. In their statement, they emphasized, "Yemen will not stand by while the Zionists and Americans bomb Tehran." At the same time, Burkan 3 ballistic missiles were launched from the same Saada province, their trajectory indicating an intent to strike infrastructure in the Beersheba area. However, one of the missiles reportedly veered off course and fell into the desert. Following the attack, Israel closed airspace south of the Dimona line for the first time since the war began. International flights bound for Eilat were rerouted to Amman and Larnaca. This caused not only logistical chaos, but also widespread panic among tourists. One eyewitness, a British citizen, told the BBC, "I came for a vacation and found myself in an area where even the internet doesn't work and helicopters aren't flying." Israeli emergency services urgently evacuated over 6,000 people to safer settlements outside the risk zone. Meanwhile, in Yemen, thousands of people took to the streets of Sana'a, declaring their fraternal duty to Iran. Videos of the demonstration showed Palestinian flags, portraits of Hussein, and banners with slogans against Israel and the U.S. This was no longer just a regional demonstration, it was the de facto opening of a southern front on a strategic level. The Houthi attack holds two significances. First, it forces Israel to stretch its military resources, distributing forces between the north, center, and now the south. Second, it strikes at the image of control. Until recently, Tel Aviv could claim that Yemen was outside the threat zone. That illusion is now shattered. The international community's reaction was mixed. France and Italy expressed concern about the destabilization of the southern Middle East, but did not directly condemn the Houthi actions. The U.S. has so far refrained from public statements. However, NATO satellites recorded the movement of military equipment from Saudi Arabia closer to Yemen's southern border, which could indicate attempts to create a cordon sanitaire or a potential operation. Israel, meanwhile, is transferring armored vehicles and air defense systems closer to the Negev. According to preliminary data, additional Iron Dome batteries and one experimental Iron Sting unit have been deployed to the region. Air defense operators are now working 24/7, and intelligence is strengthening control over the Red Sea. The southern front is open, and this is no accident. It is another element in a clearly coordinated operation by Iran and its allies. The war is turning into a multi-layered conflict where there is no longer a rear or safe directions. Hamas intensifies pressure in the south. While northern and central Israel were ablaze from strikes from Lebanon and Yemen, the southern border near Gaza began to transform into a zone of full-scale ground battles. On June 26 at 3:02 a.m., the Al-Qassam Brigades, Hamas's military wing, launched a coordinated series of attacks on 4 border sections simultaneously. According to an official IDF statement, over 60 militants attempted to break into the areas of Kisufim, Nahal Oz, Ein Hashlosha, and Kerem Shalom, using motorcycles, surveillance drones, underground tunnels, and mobile RPG teams. In one sector, Israeli forces managed to repel the assault with Merkava tanks, but in other areas, clashes escalated into street fighting in the kibbutzim. Social media was filled with videos filmed by eyewitnesses. One video showed the smoking ruins of a barn, another, a column of Israeli armored vehicles retreating under the cover of kamikaze drones. Hamas claimed to have destroyed at least 7 Israeli armored vehicles. The IDF, in turn, reported 20 soldiers killed and 40 wounded. The temporary control by militants over part of the Nahal Oz area for 2 Tier 5 hours was also confirmed. But the most alarming aspect was the new tactics. Hamas militants were now using assault teams armed not only with small arms but also radio jamming systems. In several areas, communication between IDF commanders and platoons was cut off, causing chaos and disorganization. Local residents were evacuated from 12 kibbutzim. Temporary camps in southern Israel were overflowing. Volunteers and IDF reservists worked around the clock. But something else was troubling. For the first time in 15 years, Hamas was able not only to breach the defensive border, but also to hold territory. Amid the attacks, Hamas released a statement. "This is not an episode. This is the beginning of Operation Sand and Fire. We will burn the earth until Jerusalem is liberated." This rhetoric, previously used only in media statements, was now accompanied by real operations. The Israeli General Staff ordered the deployment of 2 elite brigades, Golani and Givati, to the border zone. A tunnel-clearing campaign began. Aviation conducted precision strikes on command posts. However, the density of Gaza's urban areas hampered accuracy. There were already reports of civilian casualties, exacerbating international criticism. Meanwhile, new missile launches from northern Gaza were detected targeting Ashdod and Ashkelon, but the main threat remained ground operations. One IDF commander, in an interview with Galei Tzahal Radio, said, "We have entered a phase where war is not just about missiles, it's a fight for every meter of land." Experts feared Hamas might use improvised chemical munitions. Israeli laboratories had already begun express analysis of shell fragments. While there was no confirmation yet, alarm was growing. The southern border was no longer a line. It was now a battlefield where every day could be decisive. If Israel doesn't seize the initiative, the south could become the most painful point of this entire war. Hezbollah in the shadows, ready to pounce. While all attention was focused on the south and center, perhaps the most dangerous threat was gathering in the north. Hezbollah had not yet launched a direct strike, but it was doing everything to make Israel feel its presence. It was a matter of time. According to Al Jazeera reports from June 21st, southern Lebanon was transforming into a military foothold. Israeli intelligence recorded the movement of Fajr 5 batteries, the redeployment of medium-range missiles, and the deployment of short-range air defense systems, all in close proximity to the border. Hezbollah's field depots began operating in underground tunnels in the areas of Tebeh and Marun al-Ras. Meanwhile, the movement's leader, Hassan Nasrallah, made a public statement: "If Iran is attacked again, we will not stand by. We will enter the battle in such a way that Israel will remember 2006." This statement triggered an immediate reaction. Israel scrambled its air force, and additional forces were redeployed along the Lebanese border. Reservists from the Galilee region were urgently mobilized. Northern Israel lived in anxiety. The towns of Metula, Kiryat Shmona, and Nahariya were almost deserted. People were leaving, schools were closed, and hospitals had set up reserve facilities. For the first time in many years, bunkers were equipped with satellite dishes and constant power generators. But why was Hezbollah holding back? According to Haaretz analysts, the movement was operating on a second-wave model. If Iran succeeded in breaching Israeli defenses and inflicting critical damage, Hezbollah would activate to finally break the front. Otherwise, it would threaten but not act. This was a strategic calculation to preserve a card that could be played at the most painful moment. Moreover, Hezbollah itself was undergoing internal mobilization. According to Reuters, covert recruitment and street combat training had begun in Beirut. Young people were receiving basic training in camps outside the capital. The organization actively used social media to boost morale and demonstrate readiness for full-scale war. Israel, in turn, conducted active exercises in the Upper Galilee region. The Nahal and Parnos brigades rehearsed repelling attacks on kibbutzim. Artillery was deployed in an arc from Saft to Gush Halav. Nevertheless, vulnerability remained. The main danger was the volleys of over 150,000 rockets that, according to the CIA, Hezbollah possesses. In the event of hostilities, the Iron Dome could simply be overwhelmed by their sheer number. Amid this uncertainty, the international community began to realize the scale of the threat. The UN Security Council convened a closed meeting, but no resolutions were adopted. French President Emmanuel Macron proposed a neutral buffer zone between Lebanon and Israel, but both sides refused. The outcome was troubling. The front in the north remained silent for now, but this silence was not peace. It was the calm before the storm. At any moment, amidst further escalation in Iran or a new attack on Gaza, Hezbollah could pull the trigger. If that happens, the conflict will enter its final phase, a multi-layered regional war where all participants will stop holding back, and then no one will be able to stop the chain reaction.